The alien queen stood in the center of the grand hall, her face tense with worry. The entire planet was at war, and her army was losing. The once powerful military had been decimated by an unstoppable enemy, a warlord known across the galaxy for his cruelty and cunning. The queen, dressed in shimmering silver armor, paced back and forth. Her advisors were silent, each of them knowing that time was running out. "The warlord's forces are overwhelming us," the queen muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible. "If we do not receive aid soon, we will fall. My people will be wiped out." Her closest advisor, Commander Czar, looked at her with concern. "Your Majesty, we've sent out the distress signals to every corner of the universe. No one will come. We are alone in this battle." The queen's heart sank. It was true. The galaxy was filled with powerful species, but none had responded to their cries for help. The queen had hoped for a miracle, but it seemed that hope was fading. "Perhaps we have no choice but to surrender," Czar suggested, his voice low. The idea was unthinkable. Surrendering would mean that the queen's people would become slaves to the warlord's cruel rule. The thought alone made her stomach twist. "No," she replied firmly, shaking her head. "We will not surrender. We will fight to the last breath." The queen turned to the communication console. It was her only hope now. With a deep breath, she activated the emergency broadcast system, her message spreading across the stars. She spoke, her voice strong and steady, even as doubt threatened to overwhelm her. "We are the people of Xanthar, and we are in need of help. Our world is under attack by a powerful enemy. Our forces are too weak to fight them alone. We beg any who can hear this to come to our aid. If you have the power to help, please, we need you. Our survival depends on you." Her words echoed in the empty room, the silence afterward feeling even more crushing. Would anyone hear her plea? Would anyone care? The queen knew that there was little chance, but she refused to give up. If no one else would come, she would find a way to fight on her own. Across the vast distance of space, light years away, a small human ship was drifting through the void. Its crew, made up of soldiers and scientists, were unaware of the desperate call from Xanthar. The humans had been on a routine mission, exploring a distant star system, when their communication system suddenly picked up an unexpected transmission. It was faint, distorted, but the message was clear enough. "We beg any who can hear this, we need you." The captain of the ship, Commander Alex, paused as he listened to the distress signal, his brow furrowed in concern. He was a man who had seen many things in his time, but the desperation in the alien voice made him stop what he was doing. "Sir?" Lieutenant Moore asked, his voice laced with confusion. "What is this? It sounds like an alien distress signal." Alex nodded slowly, trying to make sense of the message. It was unlike any distress signal they had received before. There was a foreign urgency in the Queen's voice that made it clear this wasn't just a routine emergency. This was something much more serious. "I think they're asking for help," Alex said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "They're in trouble." The crew gathered around, listening to the message. Most of them were experienced soldiers, ready for any challenge that might come their way. But this was different. They had never encountered an alien race in such a dire situation before. "What do we do, sir?" Moore asked, his hand hovering over the console, ready to send a reply. Alex took a moment to think. He wasn't sure who the alien species were or if they even wanted help from humans, but one thing was clear. If they were reaching out like this, they had no other choice. "We respond," Alex said firmly. "We can't leave them to fall alone." The crew began to prepare, working quickly to get their ship ready for a journey into unknown territory. The Queen's message had come from a distant star system, and the humans knew it would take them several days to reach it. But they were not ones to shy away from a challenge. As they gathered their gear and readied the ship's weapons, there was a shared sense of purpose in the air. Back on Xanthar, the Queen anxiously waited. She stared at the sky, watching the stars twinkle above her, but the silence that followed her message felt even louder. Hours passed, then days. There was no response, no sign that anyone was coming. She feared that her people would soon be overrun. Her advisor, Czar, approached, trying to offer comfort. Your Majesty, perhaps it is time to accept reality. We must. Think about the future, it may be too late. But the Queen shook her head fiercely. No. We have no choice but to continue the fight. I will not let my people fall into the hands of a tyrant. Just as she was about to give another command to prepare her remaining forces, a soft chime from the communications console interrupted her. The Queen turned sharply, heart racing. A new message was coming through. This is Commander Alex of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress signal and we are on our way. Hold on, Queen of Xanthar. Help is coming. The Queen's heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? Was help finally on its way? A sense of relief washed over her, as she realized she was not alone after all. There was hope. There was someone who had heard her cry for help and was coming to her aid. The humans, led by Commander Alex, set course for Xanthar, their ship cutting through the stars, racing against time. They had no idea what they would face once they arrived, but they were determined to help. The Queen, her heart now filled with a renewed sense of hope, began to make preparations for the arrival of the humans. She had no idea what they would bring to the fight, but in that moment it didn't matter. The mere fact that someone was answering her call was enough to spark a flicker of hope in her heart. She looked out over her people, knowing that soon they would no longer be fighting alone. The crew of the human ship, the Voyager, was filled with excitement and nervous energy. For Commander Alex and his team, this mission was unlike any other. They had never been this far from Earth before, nor had they ever encountered an alien race in such dire need. But now they had one goal: to reach the planet of Xanthar and help the Queen and her people. Commander Alex stood at the front of the bridge, looking out at the endless sea of stars. He knew they had only a small window of time to make the journey before the alien forces overran the planet. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on his mind, but he remained calm. He had led many missions before, but this was different. This wasn't just about fighting, it was about saving a people from destruction. "Commander," said Lieutenant Moore, looking up from his console, "we're on course. The calculations are accurate. We'll reach Xanthar in approximately 3 days. Alex nodded, his face serious. "Good. Let's make sure we're ready for anything. We don't know what we're walking into." The crew, a mix of soldiers and engineers, continued to prepare. The ship's weapons were checked, supplies were stored, and everyone was briefed on the situation. There was a sense of quiet determination among them. No one spoke much during the preparations, but each member of the crew understood the gravity of their mission. This was not just about victory or defeat. It was about helping those who had no other options. As the days passed, the crew became more focused. They spent time researching everything they could about Xanthar and the warlord who had attacked it. But there was little information. The warlord's forces were known for their brutal tactics, and the warlord himself was a shadowy figure. No one knew much about him, except that he had destroyed countless civilizations without mercy. "We don't even know if the Queen's message was received by anyone else," Moore said one night, his voice tense. "What if we're the only ones coming?" Alex looked up from his datapad, meeting Moore's eyes. "Then we'll have to be enough. We don't know what's out there, but we'll fight for them. We have to." The thought of being alone in a fight against a powerful enemy didn't sit well with any of the crew. They were all well-trained soldiers, but no one had ever faced an enemy like this before. However, as the days passed, the fear began to subside. Instead, they focused on their mission. They would arrive at Xanthar, and they would do everything they could to help. On the alien planet, Queen Lyra paced in the grand hall of her palace. Her mind raced with thoughts of the humans. She had never encountered them before, and she didn't know what to expect. Would they be able to help? Would their technology be as advanced as they claimed? She had to admit a small part of her doubted they would be able to turn the tide of the war, but the fact that they were coming gave her hope. Her advisors were still skeptical. "Your Majesty, we don't know anything about these humans. What if they are just as weak as we are?" Commander Czar asked. Lyra stopped pacing and turned to face him. Then we'll have to make do. We've fought alone for too long. If they can't help us, we will fall, and that will be the end. But we must at least try. She turned her gaze to the stars outside her palace window. The human ship was still, on its way, but it felt like an eternity before they would arrive. The enemy warlords' forces were getting closer every day, and Lyra could hear the distant sounds of battle echoing through her capital. The fight was getting harder, and her people were growing more desperate. 3 days later, the human ship, the Voyager, entered the atmosphere of Xanthar. The crew felt the change in gravity as they descended toward the planet's surface. The ship's sleek design made it capable of maneuvering through any atmosphere with ease, but the landing was still a delicate procedure. "Prepare for landing," Alex ordered as the ship began its descent. He felt a sense of anticipation, knowing they were finally arriving at the alien world that had sent out a cry for help. The planet was beautiful, with sprawling green fields and towering mountains. But beneath the peaceful exterior, a war raged. The atmosphere was thick with tension. "We're coming in," Moore called from his console. "I've got the coordinates for the Queen's Palace. We'll land there." Alex nodded. "Good. Let's keep it tight. No one gets out of the ship until we've got the lay of the land." As they approached the landing zone, the crew could see the damage the war had caused. The once grand buildings of the palace were scarred by blasts, and the city around them was a shadow of what it once had been. There was a heavy silence in the air, broken only by the sound of the ship's engines as they prepared to land. The landing was smooth, but the crew was alert. As soon as the ship touched down, Alex stood, ready for action. "All right, everyone. Stay sharp. We don't know what's waiting for us out there, but we'll make sure to be ready for anything." The crew filed out of the ship, their boots thudding against the ground as they moved toward the waiting alien forces. The Queen's soldiers were there to greet them, but they looked weary, their faces filled with both hope and doubt. They were unsure of the humans, unsure if they would be able to make a difference. Commander Alex approached the Queen's representative, a tall and regal alien who seemed to be in charge of the soldiers. "I'm Commander Alex of the United Earth Fleet," he said, extending his hand in greeting. "We're here to help." The alien hesitated for a moment, then shook his hand. "Your presence here is a relief, but the warlord's forces are closing in. You may have arrived just in time." Alex nodded. "We're ready to do whatever it takes." Inside the Queen's palace, Lyra sat at the head of a long table, awaiting the arrival of the human commander. Her advisors were still doubtful, and her heart raced with anticipation. Would they be able to save her people? When the doors finally opened, Commander Alex entered, his team close behind him. The Queen stood, her eyes searching his face for any sign of what kind of leader he was. The moment of truth had arrived. "Commander Alex," she said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "You've arrived. I thank you for answering our call for help." Alex bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, we will do everything we can to help. We may not know your world, but we know what it's like to fight for survival." The Queen studied him for a moment before speaking again. "Then let's begin." The air on Xanthar was thick with tension. The humans had finally arrived, and now they stood face to face with the Queen's representatives. Commander Alex, leading the way, had prepared himself for this moment. But nothing could fully prepare him for the strange world he had entered. The alien palace was vast, its high ceilings echoing with the quiet murmurs of the Queen's advisors. Guards stood at attention, their alien eyes watching every movement of the human team. Commander Alex felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The Queen's people were depending on them, and there was no room for failure. He took a deep breath, his hands resting by his sides as he surveyed the room. The Queen's throne was empty, but the air around it still held a sense of power. "Commander Alex," said an alien officer, his voice deep and formal. "The Queen awaits, you in the council room. She wishes to speak with you directly." Alex nodded, offering a respectful smile to the alien officer. "Lead the way," he replied. As they walked through the grand corridors of the palace, Alex took in the sights around him. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols and alien artwork, some of which seemed to pulse with life. The architecture was unlike anything on Earth, yet there was something familiar about it, a shared sense of purpose, a unity that spoke of strength in the face of adversity. It reminded him of the resilience he'd seen in human soldiers. The group entered a large chamber where Queen Lyra stood waiting. She was a striking figure, her tall frame and glowing skin making her seem both regal and imposing. She wore an elegant robe of deep violet, which shimmered as she moved. Her face was soft, yet there was a hardness in her eyes, a hint of the weight of leadership and the pain of her people's suffering. Commander Alex stepped forward, offering a polite bow. "Your Majesty, it's an honor to meet you in person. We've come to offer our help." Queen Lyra studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. She had sent out the distress call in desperation, but now, seeing the humans standing before her, there was a flicker of hope in her heart. She had not expected anyone to answer, and yet here they were, strange foreign beings who, despite their differences, were willing to help. "Commander Alex," she said, her voice carrying the weight of command, yet soft with curiosity. "Your people have answered our call. I do not know what to expect, but I am willing to place my trust in you. My people are dying. My army is weakening, and the warlord's forces are closing in." "We'll do everything we can, Your Majesty," Alex assured her. "We may be from different worlds, but we both understand the cost of this war. We will fight by your side every step of the way." Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze shifting to the soldiers behind Alex. They were well armed, with equipment that the Queen's people had never seen before. Their weapons were sleek, compact, and powerful. It was clear to her that the humans were well prepared. "We have no time to waste," Lyra said, her voice hardening. "The warlord's forces are relentless. They will stop at nothing to conquer our planet. We need to strike back now." Alex glanced at his team, his thoughts racing. "We have a plan," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's our best shot. We'll need your help to put it into action." Lyra's interest was piqued. "What do you have in mind?" The planning room was filled with tension as Commander Alex and his team presented their strategy to the Queen and her generals. A large holographic map of Xanthar's terrain lit up the center of the room. The map showed the positions of both the Queen's forces and the warlord's armies. The warlord's forces were vast, spread across the planet like a dark cloud, while the Queen's soldiers were scattered and weakened, their numbers dwindling with each passing day. "This is what we're up against," Alex said, pointing to the warlord's forces on the map. "They have superior numbers and advanced technology, but we have something they don't: strategy. We'll strike their supply lines first, take out their resources, and slow down their advance." The Queen's generals exchanged glances, some of them doubtful, others intrigued. "It sounds risky," one of them said, his voice cautious. "If we target their supply lines, we risk provoking a full-scale assault. It could be a disaster." Alex met the general's eyes. "I understand the risk, but we have no choice. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything. We need to disrupt their supply chains, weaken their forces, and give your army a fighting chance." Lyra watched the exchange closely, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had to make. Her people were depending on her to lead them through this war. Could she trust these humans, who were so different from her own people, to help them win? "We will do it," Lyra said finally, her voice resolute. "If this is our best chance, then we will take it. We will fight with you, humans. Let us show the warlord that we are not so easily defeated." The plan was set into motion quickly. The human soldiers, along with the Queen's best warriors, began preparing for the first strike. Alex and his team trained the aliens in using some of the advanced weapons they had brought with them. The weapons were strange to the Xanthar soldiers, but they quickly adapted. Under Alex's guidance, they learned how to operate the sleek human rifles and set up defense systems around their camp. Lyra stood on a raised platform overlooking the preparations, her mind focused on the coming battle. She had always been a leader, but this was different. She had never faced such overwhelming odds. As she watched the humans working alongside her soldiers, she felt a strange sense of unity. Despite their differences, they were working together toward a common goal. "This is our chance," she whispered to herself, a determined look on her face. "We will not let them take our planet. Not today." As the sun set on the alien world, the combined forces of the Queen and the humans made their final preparations for the battle ahead. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, and though some were nervous, there was also a spark of hope. For the first time in a long while, the Queen's people believed they could win. Commander Alex stood beside Queen Lyra as the night settled around them. The quiet was heavy, but there was a sense of purpose in the air. "We're ready," Alex said, looking toward the horizon. "Let's show them what we're made of." Lyra nodded, a rare smile breaking through her usual calm demeanor. "Together we will win this battle." The first light of dawn broke across the alien landscape, casting long shadows over the camp where the combined forces of the Queen and the human soldiers had gathered. The air was still and quiet, but beneath the calm, the tension was palpable. Today would be the beginning of their fight to reclaim Xanthar. Commander Alex stood with his team near the edge of the camp, surveying the preparations. His soldiers were adjusting their gear, checking their weapons, and making final adjustments to the defensive lines. The alien soldiers, trained by the humans over the last few days, were ready. They had quickly adapted to using human technology and strategies, though there was still some nervousness in the air. The warlord's forces were known to be fierce and ruthless, and no one knew exactly what to expect. "We can do this," Alex muttered to himself, more to steady his own nerves than anyone else's. "We have to." The Queen, who had been overseeing her own troops, approached him. Her regal presence made the soldiers around her straighten up, their eyes filled with respect and hope. Despite the war, she had remained calm, determined to lead her people through the darkest times. Today, that strength was needed more than ever. "Commander Alex," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with quiet resolve. "Are you ready?" Alex nodded. "We'll give them everything we've got. The warlord's forces won't know what hit them." She studied him for a moment, her eyes intense. "I trust you, human. Lead us to victory." With that, they made their way to the command center, where the final plan was about to unfold. The map of Xanthar lit up on a large screen in front of them, showing the positions of both the Queen's forces and the warlord's troops. The goal was clear: take out the enemy's supply lines first, strike them when they were weakest, and give the Queen's army the chance they needed to hold their ground. "Team A, you're on the northern route," Alex said to his soldiers, his voice commanding. "Your mission is to cut off the warlord's supply line and create a distraction. Team B, you'll head south and provide support for Team A once they're in position." The soldiers nodded, their faces grim but determined. There was no turning back now. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to put their skills to the test. Queen Lyra's army, armed with human weaponry, moved out first, their boots thudding softly on the ground as they moved to their designated positions. The humans followed closely behind, their movements precise, honed through years of training. Despite the differences in their cultures, they moved as one, a single, unified force. As they approached the enemy lines, the sounds of battle began to grow louder in the distance. The warlord's forces were advancing, and soon the Queen's soldiers would meet them head-on. The tension in the air was thick with the promise of battle, the weight of the lives at stake hanging over them all. Commander Alex and his team crouched behind a rock formation, watching the enemy troops approach. His heart raced, his fingers gripping his weapon tightly. This was it. The warlord's forces were large and they were powerful. But Alex had confidence in his soldiers, and the Queen's army had already proven themselves capable. "They're coming. More," Alex's lieutenant whispered, his voice barely audible. "Ready?" Alex nodded. "Stay sharp. Remember the plan." The first shots rang out as Team A moved into position. The enemy forces, unaware of the ambush, were caught off guard as explosions rocked their supply lines. The warlord's troops scrambled, trying to regroup, but it was too late. The humans and aliens worked together seamlessly, their attacks coordinated and efficient. They had the advantage of surprise, and they weren't wasting it. Lyra's forces, inspired by the humans' success, charged forward, their weapons firing as they engaged the enemy. The clash of metal and the roar of gunfire filled the air, but there was something different about this fight. It wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for freedom. The Queen's people, once oppressed and outnumbered, were now fighting back side by side with their new allies. Alex led his team through the chaos, his mind focused on the mission. He could see the warlords' troops starting to regroup, their numbers growing. This wasn't going to be an easy fight, but they were making progress. They were pushing the enemy back, inch by inch. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the ground, near Alex, sending a shockwave through the air. He ducked behind a boulder, his heart racing. "Moore, status report." Moore quickly checked his console. "Team A has completed their mission. The supply lines are down and we've got their attention. We're holding the line, but they're pushing back hard." "Good," Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to hold out for a little longer. Team B, fall back to support Team A. We can't let them regroup." Just as he spoke, the sound of engines grew louder, and a new wave of enemy troops appeared on the horizon. The warlords' forces were bringing in reinforcements. Alex's heart sank. They had to finish this quickly or risk being overrun. But just as the reinforcements began to close in, a new wave of gunfire came from the east. The Queen's soldiers, now fully integrated with the humans' tactics, had flanked the enemy. The warlords' reinforcements were caught in the crossfire, and they began to scatter, thrown into disarray. Alex smiled, his heart lifting. "That's it. Keep the pressure on." With the enemy forces split and disorganized, the combined forces of the Queen and the humans pressed forward. Explosions echoed in the distance as they advanced, cutting down enemy forces one by one. The warlords' troops were faltering, their once impressive assault now crumbling under the weight of the counterattack. Lyra, her face determined, led her forces forward. The humans had given her army a fighting chance, and now it was up to her to finish what had been started. "We can win this," Lyra muttered to herself, her eyes focused on the battlefield ahead. She could see the warlords' forces beginning to retreat, their lines breaking as they tried to regroup. The tide of the battle had turned, and victory was within reach. As the battle raged on, the humans and the Queen's forces continued to push forward, taking ground from the enemy with each passing moment. The warlords' troops were retreating, but it was clear that the battle was far from over. This was just the beginning. But for the first time in a long while, Queen Lyra and Commander Alex allowed themselves to believe in victory. The battle had raged for hours, the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing across the alien landscape. The combined forces of Queen Lyra and the humans had made significant progress, but the warlords' army was far from broken. Reinforcements continued to pour in, and the warlords' forces, though disorganized, were still a formidable force. Commander Alex stood at the edge of the battlefield, scanning the chaos through his helmet's visor. His heart was pounding in his chest, and the weight of the mission pressed heavily on his shoulders. The humans and aliens had fought side by side, and together they had pushed back the enemy, but the final victory was still out of reach. "Moore, status report," Alex called into his comms, his voice steady despite the tension. "We're holding the line, sir," Moore replied, his voice coming through the speaker crackling with static. "But the enemy's bringing in more troops. We've got to end this now." Alex nodded, clenching his fists. He knew they couldn't afford to drag this out any longer. The warlords' forces were regrouping, and if they weren't careful, they would find themselves in a battle they couldn't win. "All right," Alex said, turning to Lyra, who had just arrived beside him. "We need to move quickly. I'll take my team and strike their command center. If we can take out the warlords' leadership, it could collapse their forces." Lyra's eyes locked onto his, her expression fierce and determined. "You're right. We've pushed them this far, but it's time to end this. I'll have my forces support your strike. Together we'll take the warlord down." "Let's do it," Alex said, signaling to his team. The final assault began as the combined forces of humans and aliens surged forward. Alex led the charge, his soldiers moving swiftly and strategically. They had trained for this moment, and now they were ready. The warlords' command center was located in a fortified compound, deep in the heart of their stronghold. It was heavily guarded, but Alex knew that they had to take it if they had any hope of ending the war. "Stay sharp," Alex called to his team as they advanced through the dense forest, closing in on their target. "This is it. We hit hard, and fast." The team moved silently through the trees, their footsteps muffled by the thick underbrush. They could see the lights of the enemy compound in the distance, the guards patrolling the perimeter unaware of the approaching strike. Alex raised a hand to signal his team to stop. "We hit them at the same time," Alex said in a low voice. "On my mark." He waited for the perfect moment, watching the guards' movements. Finally, he gave the signal. In an instant, the team sprang into action. They stormed the compound, their weapons firing with deadly precision. The guards didn't have time to react. Within moments, the compound's perimeter was cleared, and the team moved quickly toward the command center. Inside, the warlords' officers scrambled to respond. They had not expected a direct assault, and now they were in disarray. The humans and aliens fought their way through the building, their teamwork flawless. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. There was no room for mistakes. Meanwhile, Lyra's forces were engaged in their own battle outside the compound. The Queen's soldiers, armed with human technology, held the line against the warlords' reinforcements. Lyra stood at the front, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Her people were fighting with everything they had, and she could see the determination in their eyes. The humans had given them hope, but now it was up to them to finish the fight. "Push forward," Lyra shouted, raising her weapon and leading her soldiers into the fray. Her voice rang out, carrying over the sound of gunfire. "For Xanthar!" The Queen's forces surged forward, charging at the warlords' reinforcements. The combined power of human and alien forces was too much for the enemy to handle. The warlords' troops began to retreat, falling back as they were pushed toward their command center. Back inside the compound, Alex's team had reached the warlords' inner sanctum. They burst through the doors, their weapons raised. The warlord, a tall and menacing figure, stood at the far end of the room, flanked by his top officers. His eyes narrowed as he saw the humans and aliens enter. "You think you can defeat me?" The warlord growled, his voice filled with rage. "I've crushed civilizations before. You are nothing." Alex's voice was calm but filled with resolve. "You've lost, warlord. Your army is breaking and your forces are fleeing. You won't be able to hold on much longer." The warlord sneered, his hands clenching into fists. "You may have gained some ground, but you don't understand. This is my planet. I will never lose." With a swift motion, the warlord's officers opened fire. The humans and aliens dove for cover, returning fire as the room erupted into chaos. Explosions rang out, and the air was thick with smoke and the sound of battle. Alex's team pushed forward, determined to finish the fight. They moved as one, their movements synchronized and their focus unshakable. Slowly but surely they advanced, taking out the warlord's officers one by one. Finally, it was just Alex and the warlord, facing off in the center of the room. The warlord lunged at Alex, but the commander was faster. With a quick motion, Alex knocked the warlord's weapon from his hand and disarmed him. "You've lost," Alex said, his voice steady. "Surrender now and we can end this without any more bloodshed." The warlord's face twisted with fury, but he realized the battle was over. His forces had been scattered, and the Queen's army had broken through. He had no choice but to surrender. Outside, the battle had come to an end. The warlord's troops were in full retreat, and Lyra's forces had secured victory. The sound of gunfire slowly faded as the last of the enemy forces fled. The combined forces of the Queen and the humans had achieved what seemed impossible. As Alex walked out of the compound, the Queen approached him, her face full of gratitude and relief. "You've done it, Commander. You've saved us." Alex nodded, his expression somber. "It wasn't just me, it was all of us. We fought together, and that's how we won." Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "Xanthar is free. thanks to you and your people." The two leaders stood together, looking out over the battlefield. The war was over, but the rebuilding would take time. Still, in that moment, they both knew that the future of Xanthar had changed forever. With the humans and aliens working together, they had proven that even the greatest challenges could be overcome. The war was over. The warlord had been defeated and his forces were in full retreat. The Queen's people, once oppressed and on the verge of collapse, stood victorious. The battlefield was quiet now, the sound of gunfire replaced by the soft whispers of relief and the hum of soldiers cleaning their weapons. Commander Alex stood beside Queen Lyra, looking out at the aftermath of the battle. The sky above them was clear, and the air felt lighter. The heavy weight of the war had been lifted, but there was still much work to be done. The warlord's army had been crushed, but the true challenge now lay in rebuilding Xanthar and ensuring peace would last. "We did it," Alex said, his voice filled with awe. He had never expected to see a planet at war, let alone fight side by side with an alien race. But now, standing on the soil of Xanthar, he felt a sense of pride. They had not only survived, they had won. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "Yes, we did, but the real work begins now. My people need to rebuild. We need to heal." The Queen looked around at the wreckage of her capital. Buildings had been destroyed, homes had been lost, and many lives had been sacrificed. But in the midst of the devastation, she could already see the first signs of hope. The people of Xanthar were beginning to move through the city, organizing recovery efforts and offering assistance to those who had been injured. It was a slow process, but the spirit of unity and strength that the humans had brought to them had ignited something in her people. They were no longer just survivors. They were fighters. Later that day, Alex and Lyra stood before the people of Xanthar. The surviving soldiers and citizens gathered in the city's central square, their faces tired but filled with hope. The battle was over, but the healing had just begun. The crowds had gathered to thank their new allies, the humans, who had played such a crucial role in their victory. Alex, standing at the podium beside Lyra, looked out over the sea of faces. He had seen many battlefields, but never had he seen so much emotion in one place. It wasn't just about victory, it was about the bonds they had formed and the trust they had built. Lyra spoke first. Her voice, once filled with fear and doubt, was now steady and full of strength. "My people," she began, "today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Xanthar, a chapter written not in blood but in unity. For many years we fought alone. We suffered, we lost, and we feared. But today we stand together. We stand with the humans, our allies." There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd. The people of Xanthar had not been sure what to expect from the humans. They had heard of Earth and its people, but to meet them face to face, to fight beside them, it had been an experience none of them would forget. Now, they were grateful. Without their courage, their strength, and their determination, we would not have won. It is because of them that Xanthar is free. Lyra's eyes shifted to Alex, who stood beside her, his expression quiet but proud. Commander Alex and his people gave us more than weapons. They gave us hope. Alex stepped forward, his heart swelling with pride. He had never imagined this moment, standing before an entire planet's population, being thanked for something that felt so impossible only days ago. "Your Majesty, people of Xanthar," Alex began, his voice strong but humble. "It was an honor to fight with you. Your bravery, your strength, it inspired us. We may come from different worlds, but we all share the same goal, to protect the ones we love and to ensure peace for future generations. We did not win this war alone. We won together." The crowd cheered, a wave of excitement sweeping through them. For the first time in a long while, the people of Xanthar felt a sense of unity, not only within their own species, but with another. They had formed a bond, and it was one that would carry them forward. As the day came to a close, Alex and Lyra stood together on the balcony of the Queen's palace, watching the people below. The sun had set, and the stars now filled the sky, twinkling brightly as if celebrating their victory. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He had thought about this moment a lot. The battle was over, but the future was uncertain. The humans had helped secure Xanthar's freedom, but now the question remained. What kind of future would they build together? Lyra looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "We build it together," she said simply. "We will rebuild Xanthar, yes, but we will also strengthen the bond between our two peoples. We are no longer just two separate species. We are allies, and together we will face whatever comes our way." Alex smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He had come to Xanthar to help, but he had gained something far more valuable: a new ally, a new friend, and a new sense of purpose. "We'll stand with you, Queen Lyra," Alex said. "Whenever you need us, we'll be here." The Queen nodded, a rare, genuine smile spreading across her face. "And we will stand with you, Commander. Always." The days that followed were filled with work. The humans helped the Xanthar people rebuild their cities, assist with the wounded, and train new soldiers. There was a sense of unity in the air, a feeling of determination. The war was over, but the alliance between their two worlds was just beginning. In the coming weeks, talks began about the future of their relationship. There was talk of trade, mutual protection, and sharing knowledge. What had started as a desperate plea for help had blossomed into something much greater, a partnership between two very different peoples. And as the stars continued to shine above Xanthar, Commander Alex and Queen Lyra knew that this was only the beginning of a new era. Together they would face whatever challenges the future held, united in their shared strength and their belief in a better tomorrow.